I love Australia. It's one of my favourite places. In this series, I'll be exploring 6 of Australia's unique landscapes. Join me as I travel through spectacular tracts of wilderness. From the red sands of the desert,
This is a landscape that is truly scarlet. It's really beautiful.
to the tropical waters of the Great Barrier Reef. From the wetland floodplains
It's big, dangerous.
to the dark heart of the rainforest.
Makes you feel very small and insignificant when you're standing next to a buttress route like this.
On the trail of the weird and wonderful animals found here and nowhere else.
That's a great bridge. Wasn't that beautiful? For a naturalist, this is one of the most inspirational places to visit on our entire planet.
As I set out on an epic adventure into wild Australia. I'm flying 9,000 miles to the other side of the world to explore one of the most remote wilderness landscapes of Australia, the wetlands.
Listen to that. It's the sound of the very essence of nature, the energy of the land itself. There's a wildness here that really sings in the landscape. It's beautiful.
These wetlands are in the Northern Territory at the top end of Australia. I'm heading out to Arnhem Land, one of the most remote and inaccessible regions in the country. My destination is Mount Borrowdale, on the edge of the sandstone plateau overlooking Cooper Creek floodplains. It's an area that's home to Australia's most deadly predator, the saltwater crocodile, and a vast array of native birds. The first light of dawn is the very best time to travel.
You know, sometimes it just feels amazing to be alive in a wild place like this. Just love this time of day. It's cool. In a couple of hours it'll be 40 degrees. This mist coming across the floodplain here is amazing.
This wetland area has a monsoon climate with a huge variation between dry and wet, and I'm here right at the end of the dry season after 7 months without rain.
Believe it or not, in a few weeks' time when the rains come, this could be under 3 meters of water. It's hard to imagine that now. And the only way you could get through here then is in a boat. Astonishing landscape. Now, it might seem that this is a very strange time of year to come to a wetland, the dry season. But actually this is one of the very best times to come here. With the water so dried out, the wildlife is concentrated at the billabongs. That makes it much easier to find.
And that's where I'm heading, the Cooper Creek Billabong.
Oh, here we are.
From now on, I'll be travelling by boat. This beautiful billabong is a stretch of deeper water that's been left isolated as the floodwaters have retreated. As one of the few permanent waterways in the area, all wildlife is gathered here, waiting for the rains, including huge flocks of magpie geese, whistling ducks, and pygmy geese. Just a few of the nearly 900 species of birds to be found in Australia.
Glossy ibis, being very glossy in the morning light. That extraordinary curving bill.
But although this may look like paradise, There's a good reason I'm in a tin boat and not a canoe. There's a hidden danger lurking in the mist. These wetlands are the main breeding grounds for saltwater crocodiles. As the floodwaters have retreated, all the crocs in the area are concentrated here, competing for this limited territory.
All the way along this billabong, every 50 or so metres, there's a crocodile that's got just its eyes and its nostrils out of the water, watching, doing the I'm a log trick. Croc City, this is. Risky business being a bird round here. Tiptoe through the crocodiles. And down he goes. That's so sinister when they go down like that.
This giant saltwater croc warming up in the sun looks like the dominant male of the billabong. Salties are the largest living crocodiles in the world. I'd say he was 4 meters long. A croc that big will see me as prey.
This isn't a creature to play with if you come to Australia. That is the top predator in this landscape, and it's an animal you have to pay respect to.
He's keeping an eye on me.
I think I'm going to go a bit further down.
I push on down the billabong past magpie geese and jabiru, both uniquely Australian birds enjoying the early morning sunshine.
And you can see here these little chicks. They're the chicks of the comb-crested jacana, which are these beautiful birds with this red crest, which looks just lovely in this morning light.
Jacanas are sometimes called Jesus birds because they appear to walk on water.
It's astonishing. You get these incredibly close encounters with the birds. You don't need a spotting scope here, just your binoculars. These jacana are so beautiful. I think it's one of my favourite birds of the wetlands. It's got these very strange looking legs and very widespread feet. When you see them fly, they're so long they trail out behind them like a big plume. Beautiful.
The huge croc that was watching me earlier is patrolling his patch. In the world of the crocodile, size matters. As the dominant animal, he'll have the best territory, pushing his weaker rivals out to the edges of the billabong. At the widest stretch of the billabong, there's a surprising sight. Animals I'd expect to see on an English farm. A group of pigs. Pigs were introduced by the first European settlers, and there are now estimated to be over 23 million pigs living wild in Australia.
It's funny to see those pigs here. Of course, they're an introduced species. They're totally alien to this environment, but they do very well here. And the crocodiles like to eat them, of course.
I think that must be a dead pig by the side of the billabong. That pied heron is having a poke at it. That's a huge pig. The carcass must weigh over 200 kilos. But the heron isn't the only opportunist scoping it out.
That crocodile's definitely got his eye on that pig.
It's the dominant male who's been following me. Crocodiles are specialist predators of the water's edge. From the safety of the water, they remain in a sit-and-wait position, choosing their moment to strike.
The patience that they have is amazing.
The head of a crocodile is around 20% of its body weight. The jaws are designed to lock together with enormous power. This croc is definitely over 4 meters long. It seems like pork's on today's menu.
Look at the way they can just take that pig. Is that power or what? Just like a dog with a small bone in its mouth. It's amazing.
Crocodiles sometimes take large prey items and store them in caches beneath the water. Crocs have relatively small stomachs, so this pig would be too much for one sitting.
The crocodile's trying to take the pig underwater. The power. Look at that. But it's not every day they get this close to a saltwater crocodile. Now, they've been here from the age of the dinosaurs. Some people estimate 250 million years they've been crocodile-like creatures. That, if you ask me, is the most dangerous predator to be found on the planet Earth.
I think he's going to hide that pig where the other crocs can't find it.
You hear it hissing. He's not happy with me because I've got in the way.
When he slaps his head like that, it's a sign of aggression. He's warning me away. I don't want him coming back and chasing me off.
I think I'll leave him to it.
I'm heading down the Billabong into Stone Country to meet some people who live in this wild and extraordinary place. I'm in the north of Australia, exploring the wetlands of Arnhem Land. The rocky outcrops that lie above the floodplains are called Stone Country. This remote and sparsely populated territory holds a lot of secrets.
It's baking hot today, and when the sun is high up like this, the one thing you need is shade. But in the Stone Country, you never have to look very far for shade. There are always good overhangs to be found, like this one here.
But it's not just shade to be found here. These rocks house a gallery of ancient Aboriginal artwork.
Look at that. Fascinating. Of course, these overhangs were frequently important places for the local people. The rock country, as it is, looking out over the flood meadows, basically looking out over a supermarket. There's loads more to see in here too. Aboriginal people have been in Australia 50 or maybe even 60,000 years, and some of this rock art could be tens of thousands of years old, particularly the dark red ochre figures. And perhaps you can imagine grasses laid down to lie on, or mats, and either groups of men or groups of women or families lying here in the shade, looking up at the cave roof, telling the stories associated with the art. Aboriginal people are very good storytellers. They have amazing stories that are very important to their culture, much of which is represented on the roof.
This is an X-ray painting of a barramundi. You can tell by the pointed head, and they're abundant in the Billabong, so I'm joining some local friends to see if I can catch one. Connie Nyingle and her grandson Moses and friend Edith have lived in Arnhem Land all their lives and generations of their families before them. Connie likes to bring Moses out bush so that he can learn the traditional ways of living from the land. We're using a time-honoured Aboriginal method of line fishing that we've adapted to work with modern fishing lines and lures.
Had a nibble. There's one there somewhere, just down there. Come on, Moses, get us a fish.
You'll try.
After a morning's fishing, I'm ready for lunch.
Well, Connie, I think it's time we go and cook the catch of the day. What do you think? Not much biting at the moment.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ray? Good size for dinner?
Yeah, I think it'll be all right, won't it? Not bad.
We're going to cook the barramundi in a traditional ground oven. The hardest part of the job is digging a deep hole. Getting the fire going is easy with all this dry wood around. We need to get the stones very hot so that the fish cooks on top of them.
Because rock is like an oven.
Nice and hot.
I'm after one more important addition to our oven.
This is a paperbark tree. For the Aboriginal people, it was incredibly useful. You can take off big sheets of this bark and use it to make bedding, to make the roofs of shelters, for making ground ovens, which is what we're going to use some paperbark for, and for making fires. Are we going to use anything for flavouring?
Yeah,
What shall we
leaves.
use?
Paperback, but we got two kinds.
Oh, yeah, I can smell that strong smell of tea tree oil.
Start putting some leaves.
Okay. Soil.
Yep, soil on top.
By covering the paperbark with soil, we trap the heat and flavour inside the oven.
You don't want to waste this smoke.
And that's where the flavour's coming from. Yeah, it looks good. It's a very good way of cooking because, of course, there's no aluminium foil that'll just stick here forever. It's all natural. All goes back to the forest.
1 hour later, and the paperbark's hot to touch. That's a sign that our fish should be ready to eat.
Yeah, it looks all right, doesn't it? Oh, the smell.
The smell?
A very good smell. Mmm. It smells great, doesn't it?
So once when you peel the skin off.
Oh, look at that. It looks amazing. Can I try some?
Of course.
Let's try it.
Barramundi meat always be tasty.
That's beautiful. That's so delicate. Cooked to perfection.
Barramundi is a prime delicacy in Australia's top restaurants. But in my opinion, it's best like this, cooked and eaten in the wild.
That's very good.
But my day is not over yet. I've left the stone country and headed out across the dried up floodplain with former cattle rancher Greg Towns. Greg manages this environment to protect the native wildlife. Today we're on our way to remove an invasive grass that's destroying the wetlands. On the far side of the water meadow, I spot some of Australia's most elegant birds.
Some two lovely brolga there. They're beautiful.
In the dry months, brolgas gather at the water's edge to dig in the mud for tubers.
Just majestic birds, aren't they?
As we continue across the plains, we disturb thousands of grazing magpie geese. These vast honking flocks feed on the seeds of wild rice and other native grasses. But these wonderful birds are under threat because the grass they eat is being overtaken by an imported species called paragrass, introduced to feed cattle. As we push further into the central floodplain, the land gets even drier. It's like being on Mars. At the far side of the mudflats, I see the scale of the problem. Huge meadows of alien paragrass.
So what should be here?
Oh, wild rice and spike rush, which are both great grasses for the birds. And this stuff has eventually choked that out, which is a shame because we're losing our birds because of it.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something as simple as a grass can have such a big impact. So what can you do to control it?
The easiest option for us is to burn it at the end of the season.
Right.
Hopefully you'll burn it right down to the ground. Your rains come, flood the country, and that'll drown it.
And that's exactly what Greg's going to do. Burn away this destructive grass. Controlled fire burning is a traditional Australian form of land management, requiring skill and experience. The heat and wind conditions need to be exactly right. This is a unique opportunity to watch the process of farming with fire.
Wow, it's a salutary lesson on the power of fire, isn't it? The front of that fire is moving like a racehorse. You wouldn't want to get caught in front of it. Interesting though, this is a landscape of water and of fire. For tens of thousands of years, the Aboriginal people burned this landscape. They still do. What I think is interesting though is to see fire being used today to look after the land in a different sense, to remove an invasive species of grass that chokes up the waterways and impacts the welfare of the birds and other animals that have evolved to depend on this landscape.
The fire will run until it meets a natural fire break, where it'll burn out.
I love Arnhem Land. It's one of my favourite places on our planet. There's a wildness here that is really profound. It touches you deep inside. To see all this wildlife at this season as well, that's incredible. And it really justifies the existence of wild areas to remind us of how our planet really should be.
Next time,
It doesn't get much more Australian than that, does it?
fantastic.
Later on at 9 tonight, our gripping drama, Marcella, continues. That's after our second visit to Coronation Street, which is coming up next. And over on STV Glasgow next, Jackie Brambles has more hints and tips to help stop Scotland scammers.